Welcome to Finance Deep Dive. So, have you ever been in the grocery store lately, looked at your cart, and just felt this massive disconnect? You hear on the news that the economy is maybe cooling down, but the prices in front of you are telling a completely different story. Well, if you feel like food prices are kind of playing by their own set of rules, you're absolutely right. And today we're going to unpack exactly why that is.
All right, so let's get right into the big question. Why on earth is your grocery bill still soaring? I mean, really? Other parts of the economy seem to be calming down a bit, but that food bill, it just keeps going up. It's not just in your head, and believe me, it's not just one simple thing. We're about to untangle this whole complex web of reasons behind that sticker shock you feel at the checkout line. Okay, so this right here, this tells a really important story. Just look at the numbers for a second. The main inflation number, what they call the headline CPI, is up 2.7%. But food, that's up 3.1%, and going out to eat, forget about it, that's jumped a whopping 4.1%. But here's the real kicker. While all of that is going on, real weekly earnings, that's your paycheck after you account for inflation, are actually going down. So your money is literally buying less, right at the same time food is getting way more expensive. It's a tough spot to be in.
So where do we even begin to look for answers? Well, we start with the food itself. The first huge piece of the puzzle is actually a biological problem. To put it simply, we just have less meat and fewer eggs to go around. And this isn't something that happened overnight. Nope, it's a crisis that's been building for years.
And this number is a huge part of the story, 28.7 million. What is that? Well, that's how many beef cows we have in the US right now. And get this, it's a 70-year low. Think about that, 70 years. What happened? Years and years of drought forced ranchers to sell their breeding stock just to stay afloat. And rebuilding a herd, man, that takes forever. You know, to get more cows in the future, you have to hold back the young female cows from the market today, which ironically makes the beef supply even tighter right now.
And you know, as if a historically tight beef supply wasn't bad enough, the poultry industry got hit again. We're talking about the bird flu, HPAI. This thing isn't just a once-in-a-while problem anymore. It's become what they call an endemic risk, meaning it's kind of always lurking. It's flared up again, forcing farmers to, well, get rid of entire flocks of millions of birds.
So what does all that mean for you at the grocery store? Well, take a look. These biological shortages have a direct and pretty dramatic impact on prices. The forecast for this year, it shows beef prices jumping another 11.6%. And eggs? Whoa, they could soar by almost 25%. This is a straight line from fewer cows in the pasture and fewer chickens in the coop to higher prices at the checkout.
Okay, so that's the protein supply. But now, let's pivot to a totally different kind of shock to the system: labor. You know, growing food, especially all that fresh produce we love, is incredibly hard work. It takes a ton of hands. And right now, the entire agricultural labor market is going through this huge structural shift that's pushing costs up for everybody. Check out this number. Minus 40%. That's the estimated drop in the workforce in some key farming areas. Think parts of California after immigration enforcement was stepped up. And the consequence is just brutal. When you don't have enough people to pick something delicate like a strawberry, what happens? It just rots on the vine. We're talking billions of dollars in lost crops, and of course, a lot less produce actually making it to your store.
So, you might be thinking, okay, but what about the legal guest worker program, the H-2A? Well, here's the thing. It's incredibly expensive. When you add up all the costs, not just wages, but housing, transportation, all of it, farmers say it can cost them up to $30 an hour for just one worker. And for things like fruits and veggies, where labor is a massive chunk of the total cost, well, guess who that expense gets passed on to? Yep, it's us. All right, the third major piece of our puzzle is geopolitics. Yeah, believe it or not, global politics lands right on your plate. Things like trade policies and tariffs, they basically act like a hidden tax that adds extra cost all the way down the supply chain, from the farm straight to your kitchen. This whole situation creates what some economists call a bifurcated market, which is a fancy way of saying it's a mess that goes in two directions. On one hand, U.S. farmers actually get less money for the stuff they export, like corn and pork, because other countries hit them back with their own tariffs. But on the other hand, we, the consumers, end up paying more for all the stuff we import. It's this bizarre squeeze where both the farmer and the shopper lose out.
And listen, this is not some abstract economic theory. This is real stuff that affects the things you buy every single week. Take your morning routine. We import most of our coffee and, well, all of our bananas. So those tariff costs get passed right on through. That's why coffee prices have shot up almost 19%, and even bananas are up nearly 7%. That's literally government policy showing up in your breakfast bowl.
Okay, our fourth big driver is when nature itself sends us the bill. We're talking about the environment. All the increased volatility we're seeing, from crazy weather patterns to unpredictable energy markets, it's all adding a ton of risk and, you guessed it, a ton of cost to the whole system of producing food. And this is a perfect example of that chain reaction. Follow me on this. We're seeing a huge surge in demand for natural gas. Why? Well, it's everything from powering new AI data centers to just cold weather and exports. So the price of natural gas goes up. Okay, but why does that matter for your food? Because natural gas is the #1 ingredient in nitrogen fertilizer. It's a direct link. So sky-high energy prices today absolutely guarantee higher costs for growing crops tomorrow.
And it's not just the energy side of things. On top of all that, we're dealing with more extreme and just plain unpredictable weather. You hear about these flash droughts that can pop up with almost no warning and just devastate pastures and crops. And then you've got the ongoing water restrictions out west, which puts a very real limit on how many fruits, nuts, and vegetables can even be planted in the first place.
Okay, so you add all these huge pressures together, the biology, the labor, the politics, the weather, and what's the result? What's the new reality at the grocery store? Let's take a look at how everyone, shoppers like you and me, and the stores themselves, are trying to adapt to this new normal.
The change in how we shop has been absolutely massive. They're calling it the Great Trade Down, and the data is pretty stunning. A staggering 80% of shoppers have switched to cheaper store brands in at least one category to try and save some cash. Seriously, this is one of the biggest shifts in our shopping habits that we've seen in decades.
And it goes way beyond just buying store brands. People are getting really creative with new coping strategies. There's this trend called freezer fine dining, where you buy a nice premium frozen meal instead of dropping a ton of money on eating out. And that old idea of the one-stop shop for groceries, it's kind of dying. Now people are splitting their trips, going to a discounter for the basics, and then to a supermarket just for the fresh stuff.
So what's the final verdict in all of this? What's the big takeaway? Well, it's that there is no single villain here. You can't just point a finger at one company or one policy. It's not that simple. What we're actually living through is a deep, fundamental, structural realignment of our entire food system.
And you know what? There's actually a perfect word for what's happening. A polycrisis. It means all these different crises are converging and hitting us all at once. You've got the biological scarcity of our meat supply, the friction from our labor and trade policies, and the growing instability from climate and energy. It's the perfect storm.
Which brings us to this really powerful and kind of tough conclusion. The era that most of us grew up in, an era of cheap, seemingly endless food, well, it is ended. That cheap food was basically subsidized by a stable climate, easy global trade, and a steady supply of labor. And those things are just not the reality anymore. We're all adapting to a new normal where food, quite simply, costs more.
If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe to Finance Deep Dive. It motivates us to keep posting. Thanks so much for watching.